Welcome to another week, another show of Hawkeyed with me, Dave O'Hara. Momentarily, you'll see our good buddy Sean Bock joining us. Sean, of course, with 24/7 Sports and CBS Sports, beat writer there, handles recruiting as well, covers the Hawkeye beat, as I have mentioned in the past. Sean and I will be talking Hawkeye women's basketball today and Hawkeye men's basketball. A little bit in recruiting news, as Sean's a recruiting expert for the Hawkeyes, but a lot of it's speculative because in the past we've talked about a couple of, in Sean's past appearance a few weeks ago, we talked about a few comings and goings in Hawkeye football and men's basketball and women's basketball. So we're going to table that for today. Mike Woodson going to be done at Indiana University as head men's basketball coach there at the end of the year. We'll talk about that down the road. Also, Sean and I want to both congratulate Cooper DeJean. What a way to celebrate his 22nd birthday on Super Bowl Sunday, his Philadelphia Eagles with the big victory, but also Cooper with a pick six touchdown, his first interception of his NFL rookie season of his career. What a way to get your first interception, a pick six of Patrick Mahomes as the Eagles beat the Chiefs. So congratulations to Cooper. All that being said, Sean, great to see you again. We'll talk women's basketball first today. You're kind enough to join us for two segments today, and we'll cover men's basketball in the second segment. Scott Pritchard will close out the show with me in the third and final segment in our sports betting segment. So Sean, great to see you again. How you doing? And thanks for joining us.
Doing well, Dave. Thank you for having me. Yeah, it's not been too crazy of a time, but obviously there's been some notable things that have come up or came up throughout the Iowa basketball programs, and then it's pretty cool to see Cooper DeJean shine in the Super Bowl. Obviously, he was the guy that I covered in high school, and it was one of those first times where a guy that I've covered in high school has had that kind of success on the biggest stage. So obviously that was a pretty cool aspect of it, watching him from his freshman year of high school to, now picking off Patrick Mahomes and, ending the Chiefs run in the Super Bowl was pretty significant.
Sean, Hawkeye women now 17-7, 7-6 in the Big Ten, but on a 5-game heater after a 5-game cooler. So lose 5 games in a row, come back and win 5 in a row. And Sean, this team still, even in a victory last night over Nebraska, which has become quite a rivalry in recent years, although the Hawk women have beaten Nebraska 8 out of the last 10 games. But of course, everybody remembers the Caitlin Clark game back in Nebraska last year in overtime, where Lisa Bluter had her little flare up with the press conference after the fact. And then earlier this season with Nebraska coming in and upsetting the Hawkeye women at Carver Hawkeye Arena. But last night left no doubt, 81-66. Lucy Olson goes off for a career high 32 points.
They had that good balance yesterday too. I thought, making their twos, and obviously they were missing some. I think they were like 14 of 22 on layups, something around that, place, but Nebraska was 7 of 14 from what I saw. So, at least Iowa was getting those chances down low, and, to see kind of those 3-point shots going too, because I think we've been kind of waiting on Sydney Falter to really, emerge and really show up as kind of a offensive impact player like she was towards the end of last season. And same goes for Taylor McCabe as well. She was really fantastic. But Lucy Olsen, man, she's been phenomenal during this run. I think she's shooting like 60% from the field, like just over 40% from three. And then like going into this 5-game winning streak, she was shooting like 42% from the field on the year and, really lower numbers from three. And I think that was one of the concerns with her coming into this season was her efficiency, because that's just really something that she struggled with throughout her career at Villanova. And to see her, kind of really get comfortable, really get into a groove a bit, kind of really help Iowa turn the season around, at least, her being the face of it, has been really good for this team. And I think that's brought up, the likes of Sydney Falter, Kylie Feuerbach, who has been phenomenal on the defensive side of the floor. She's probably Iowa's best one-on-one defender. I mean, just look at the job she did on Juju Watkins a couple weeks ago. Did the same thing against Britt Prince on Monday, was shutting her down because she had a great outing against Iowa the last time these two teams played. And she's had other performances too where she's really been able to shut down the opposing team's best player. And now that you got Hannah Stolke healthy too, like obviously she didn't have the game that you wanted her to have yesterday, but you got great contributions from Ava Hyden off the bench. Like, it's just good to see other girls step up and other players step up and be able to provide that, sizable impact that you need to win some of these games and to execute down the stretch too, because that was one of the concerns during their 5-game losing streak was they weren't winning games that they should have won down the stretch. And now they've won games down the stretch. Like you look at the USC game, you look at, the Minnesota game, you look at yesterday against Nebraska. There's obviously a few games that I'm missing too that are, not coming to mind, but, to see them win those games down the stretch and be able to, avoid, tripping up down the stretch. I think that's really important too once you get into these games. Once you get into these, high profile games and the next 3 out of 5 games are going to be really daunting. You got Ohio State on the road, UCLA at home, an undefeated UCLA at home. Then you have then you have Michigan on the road. And then you also have two matchups in against Rutgers and Wisconsin, which should be easy wins. But those 3 games right there that I mentioned before, Ohio State, UCLA, Michigan, those are going to be really close games. And, for this Iowa team to learn how to win down the stretch, like that could really come in handy in those 3 games.
Yeah, that's the key right there that I'm talking about, Sean. You nailed it perfectly, is winning down the stretch because this team is too good. And as we record this on Tuesday afternoon, February 11th, Hawkeye women play at home, Carver Hawkeye Arena against Rutgers, as Sean had mentioned, on Thursday night, February 13th. Don't want to get too far down the road, Sean, like you. All the games tend to run together, but just a little bit more than a handful of games left in the regular season before the Big Ten women's tournament.
It'd definitely be kind of a gut check in the next 3 out of 5 games because they look like they're in a pretty good shape right now with the NCAA tournament. I think ESPN had them at a 9 seed this morning. So they're in pretty good shape right there. And I don't think if you lose those 3 games, like that'll impact you that much. Maybe slip you down to 1 seed. But, it'd be nice if they could get, 3 out of the next 5, or heck, maybe even 4 out of the next 5. 4 out of the next 5 may be asking for a lot. But if you can get 3, I think you're in a decently good shape of, kind of securing that 9 seed line. And then depending what you do in the Big Ten tournament as well.
Well stated as always, Sean. So go Hawkeye women, and we'll talk more about that in the upcoming weeks, next week for sure on that. So next segment, Sean is kind enough to stay over for 2 segments today. We're going to talk Hawkeye men's basketball. Sean, you ready to rock and roll?
Yeah, I'm ready to go.
Absolutely. I love it. Sean, thank you so much. He is Sean Bock, Iowa beat writer for 24/7 Sports, CBS Sports, and also recruiting specialist. We'll be back with more of Hawkeye with me, Dave O'Hara, in just a few moments.
Hawkeye is brought to you by Better Edge, your ultimate social betting marketplace. With no VIG, you're bound to win more on every bet on Better Edge. Founded by Hawkeye alum James Siles and proud Iowan Greg Kieski, Better Edge delivers an unmatched betting experience. Plus, what's not to love when they're committed to supporting charities and children's hospitals near you? Join the action now. Sign up at betteredge.com/Hawkeye and get $10 to start winning more today. Better Edge, where your social betting means your bets go further and you win more.
Welcome back to Hawkeye with me, Dave O'Hara. And Sean Bock was kind enough to stay over for 2 segments today. Joined us in the first segment talking Hawkeye women's basketball. And now we're going to talk Hawkeye men's basketball. Sean, of course, Iowa Hawkeye beat writer for 24/7 Sports and CBS Sports. Sean also a recruiting specialist there as well. Sean, boy, I'll tell you, men's season, we go from the women to the men. 2 teams on different planes, it seems like right now. Hawkeye men at 13-10 overall, 4-8 in the Big Ten. Good efforts at home against Purdue, top 10 ranked, and also Wisconsin, top 20 ranked. But we don't play this game for close seconds or just tryhards. Got to win those games, and 2 tough losses at home against Purdue and Wisconsin. Upcoming this week as we record this on Tuesday afternoon, February 11th. The Hawkeyes go to Rutgers tomorrow night on Wednesday, and then on Sunday play at Maryland, top 20 ranked or top 25 ranked Maryland in the AP poll. So a couple of tough road games. The RAC is a tough place to play at Rutgers Athletic Center, Sean, as we know in the past for any team, but the Hawkeyes specifically. But Sean, this team, boy, with injuries and Owen Freeman, we talked about it last week, out for the rest of the year with his the injured finger on his shooting hand, had surgery last week. An Oregon game upcoming down the road, a Michigan State game. Again, I don't want to get too far into the weeds of past schedule and upcoming schedule, but we'll focus on Purdue and Wisconsin past games and then most recent past, then upcoming Rutgers and Maryland. But without Owen Freeman, this team struggles, Sean. What has to happen with this team? Because Coach Fran and the guys are struggling, Fran McCaffrey, and the guys are struggling for some kind of mix here, Sean.
Yeah, I mean, has not been the season or the way that people want it to go. Obviously, there was a little bit of hope, earlier in the year. And, the way that you started off Big Ten play too. I mean, yes, you barely take down Northwestern. You go to war with Michigan on the road, almost beat Michigan on the road. And now it's like, based on these last 4 road games in Big Ten play, you're kind of like, how the heck did this Iowa team compete on the road with Michigan the way that they did? Now, fast forward now. But yeah, I mean, injuries have not helped. I mean, Owen Freeman, obviously, that was one that really stung because now you don't really have a true scorer, true post presence at that 5 spot. Yes, you have Laji Dembele and Evan Bronze, but those aren't the guys that you really want, getting the ball in the post. So now you got to focus a lot on, making plays on the perimeter and getting actions out there when you don't really have a guy inside that you can really rely on the score. And, that kind of makes things, tough. Defensively, I mean, this team just doesn't really have a defensive identity either, as we've seen throughout these games. Yes, I think the effort has been a little bit better against Purdue and Wisconsin the last two outings, but it just has not been enough. And Purdue, I mean, we saw what they did in the second half, scoring, an insane amount of points and, that allotted time. Braden Smith just having a day. I think Purdue hit like their first 5 3-pointers in the second half when these two teams played last week in Carver Hawkeye. And then, Wisconsin didn't really have that great of an offensive game. And we've kind of known Wisconsin to be, kind of an offensive powerhouse this year with their increased tempo, but it was more of kind of a grinded out game. But Iowa was able to get up 64 or only able to put up 64 points. And you're not going to win a lot of games when you put up that many points, especially with the way that little points, especially with that this Iowa team plays, and they're kind of focused on the offensive side of the floor rather than defense. So yeah, I mean, losing Freeman definitely stings. I mean, I just don't think this team really has the firepower and at least the consistency that it needed to, really be successful this year. I think I had this team winning 20 games in the regular season, and now it's like, will they reach 15 games with eight games remaining? I mean, you go to Maryland or you go to Rutgers this week. Obviously, Rutgers is Ace Bailey and Dylan Harper, two of the most talented players in the country, likely two of the top 3 picks in this year's NBA draft. And then you go to Maryland, and Maryland's been, really good this year. And what do they have that Iowa doesn't? They have, true post presence in Derek Queen and Julian Reese, as well as a point guard in Jacoby Gillespie. So that's gonna be a really difficult matchup for this Iowa team as well. So yeah, it's in, you take into account the way that Iowa has played on the road this year too, especially in Big Ten play, that just doesn't really look like a recipe for success. And, even the status of Drew Thelwell too has kind of been like the heart and soul of this Iowa team. Like there's a chance that he might be out against Rutgers and a chance that he might be out against Maryland. I think he'll play against Maryland, but that tweaked ankle that he had looked, didn't look the kindest and, might keep him out for a game. And even if he does play, he's severely limited. So, now you're down him, you're down Owen Freeman. You need more from some of these other guys too, but you just haven't really been able to get that consistency. And, you really need Peyton Sanford and Josh Dix to show up. Yes, they've had big games, but it's a matter of getting some of these other guys behind them too. And, it's just been a year where it's like, nothing has really gone right for this team. And, maybe some of the concerns that we really had coming into this year really came to fruition, but also injuries. Like injuries have played a really big role. But the fact that, this team has not been able to stay competitive on the road, in the slightest has just been really concerning to me as well.
Yeah, you mentioned it perfectly right there. We always talk about coming out at the beginning of the game on fire and coming out with some fire at halftime. Purdue, we kind of got that. It was 36-36 at half, and Purdue came out and did what Purdue does. That's why they're top 10 ranked. And Braden Smith, went off in the second half in a great way for Purdue. Okay, you kind of get that 90-81 loss. But Sean, with 7 minutes to go, the Hawkeyes were up by 1 against Wisconsin, and they scored 4 points in the last 7:24 to lose to Wisconsin. And I know John Tonje is a great talent, transferred in, to Wisconsin. But to your point, if Drew Thelwell is out, because as you mentioned, that ankle injury, he came back in, but it was in a great deal of pain during and after that game. So it will be interesting to see if he's a full go against Rutgers and an upcoming Maryland, as you mentioned. So got to play better on the road and have to put 2 halves together, at least the start of the game and the start of the second half, because these lulls are killing them, Sean.
Yeah, I mean, I think too, like, I was looking at the comparison of like some of the shot quality with Wisconsin compared to Iowa. And, what have like some of the really successful teams in college basketball done nowadays? Shoot the 3, get shots inside the paint, around the basket, and don't settle for mid-range jumpers. And I think really that was a big difference on Saturday against Wisconsin is like, yes, Wisconsin is better offensive personnel than Iowa does right now. They also run better stuff and are running better stuff and just look more cohesive with each other. And, they were taking better shots from three. They were taking shots inside the paint. They weren't taking some of these tough contested mid-range shots or, tough twos away from the rim that Iowa, kind of falls into the trap of taking. And two, I think also at the end of the game, like you look at some of those possessions that Iowa had, like it was hard to watch some of those possessions that Iowa had towards the end of the game when they were desperate. I don't have them in front of me right now, and I'm kind of, going off memory, but, you know, Seydou Traore, I think you live with some of the takes that he had, but his shot selection has been really off. Peyton Samford jacking up that three, I think with like 10 seconds left in the shot clock, you maybe could have gotten something better. Um, there were a few other ones where, Iowa missed Laji Dembele on a wide open slip. Then again, Laji's really struggled this year. What makes you think that he might have been able to get a clean look at the basket there, even if he was open? There just seems like they're just missing parts that, it just doesn't seem like, there's really just a lot of cohesion. Like, I think it's looked better the last few games, but really they were exposed at the end of the game, just not having a guy that you can really rely on to, get those shots at the end of the game. And, we've seen Josh Dix do it, but, sometimes he doesn't really assert himself like we think he should, or, a lot of defenses do a really good job at him at the end of games. Peyton Samper, he's taken some good shots and he's done a lot of good things in Iowa uniform, hit some big shots, but his shot selection at times is just really tough, like really difficult. He's just not efficient enough. You just miss having that interior post presence like Owen Freeman too. And it's just like outside of those guys, like, you don't really have, you know, capable shooters or at least consistent shooters that, you can depend on to make some of these plays down the stretch. And, that's really frustrating.
Yeah, no time like the present, Sean, for the Hawkeye men to get it together because they're going to be running out of time sooner than later. Folks, he is Sean Bock from 24/7 Sports, CBS Sports, Iowa Hawkeye beat writer, and of course, Sean, recruiting expert as well. Sean, great to see you again. Thanks for doing double duty today. First segment covering Hawkeye women's basketball, and the second segment here covering Hawkeye men's basketball. Sean, we'll talk to you in a few weeks, and thanks so much.
Yep, sounds good, Dave. Thank you for having me as always.
You're very welcome as always. And for Sean Bock, I'm Dave O'Hara with Hawkeye. We'll be back with more to close out the show in our sports betting segment with Scott Pritchard. Back with more Hawkeye in just a few moments.
Hi, this is Joe Merman from Merman Seeds. Substitutions cost you money. Why take their seconds when you can have our first choice? Here's Ben Pieper to tell you more about Merman Power Core Enlist corn.
We are way ahead of Big Seed on this one. This corn has 4 different post-herbicide tolerances, multiple modes of action for above-ground pests, and it is some of the highest-yielding corn genetics that are out on the market today.
If you're one of the many that got substituted on your corn hybrid last spring, contact your local Merman Seeds dealer today and ask them about Power Core Enlist corn. From Merman Seeds, your friend in the field.
Welcome back to Hawkeye with me, Dave O'Hara. Momentarily, you'll see our good buddy Scott Pritchard. Scotty P joining us on screen. Scott, a full-time, very successful professional sports bettor, Northeast Iowa native, as am I. But Scotty now been in Vegas 32-plus years. Back in October, he put his money where his mouth was. He mentioned on radio in August, hey, Dave, I think I'm going to take the Chiefs, Eagles against everybody else is picking other teams in the NFC, but I'm taking Chiefs to beat the Eagles in the Super Bowl. Scotty put his money where his mouth was at Circa, $4,000 bet. As a 55-1 odds, as it played out, Scotty could have netted $220,000 and won a total of $224,000 with that $4,000 bet. But Scott, you're going to educate us today. Of course, everybody's excited in Iowa because Cooper DeJean, what a way to celebrate his 22nd birthday. The OAB CIG high school star from Northwest Iowa, goes to the University of Iowa as an All-American at the University of Iowa for the Hawkeyes, then goes to the Eagles in the early second round. His rookie year, decides to wait the last game of his rookie year to get his first NFL interception, a pick six against Mahomes in the Super Bowl to celebrate his 22nd birthday and the Eagles' victory over the Chiefs. But Scotty, you then did a hedge, which was you still won some money back. You didn't give it all back or try to, throw the baby out with the bathwater. Talk to us and educate me and our viewers, please, on what you did with that. Since you didn't win almost $250,000 with the Chiefs, you did a hedge on the Eagles. Describe and take us through the process of a hedge and how you came out, please, my friend.
The bad news is I lost $4,000 on the Chiefs, but when you're getting 55-1 to net 220, you've got maneuverability, flexibility, liquidity, equity with the capital E. So in this case, I took 2 weeks. I reached out to a couple of friends and mentors, legend Jim Feist, also Steve Fezzik, who was the only world champion back-to-back in the Superbook contest, and they both said, hedge, Hedge. The question is, how much do you hedge? So the fact of the matter is, and I'll break it down for you as long as you ask, because I do like you, my friend, I like to teach, train, and explain. Before kickoff, I was guaranteed a net win of six figures because, yes, I lost I'm risking $4,000 on the Chiefs to net 220, but then I came back with six figures on the Eagles at +3 -44, +2 -09, +1.5 -05, hoping for a small remote chance of a middle solving the riddle, because if it fell KC 1, 2, or 3, then I win 324,000. As it was, I net won six figures because I bet six figures on the Eagles. I do want to give a shout out to the world's best, the world's largest sports book. I'm telling you, Derek Stevens is an innovator, but in this specific case, VP of Operations Mike Palm was very accommodating, as was Jeff Benson, the main man, supervisor behind the counter, and then also Will Chase. So I do want to give a shout out because Circa is the one place, as a sharp, as a wise guy, as an unfair advantage player, Dave, they're the one place that will take a bet. So I have 14 outs to get down, but Circa took a big fat bet and they opened themselves up to a big fat middle. So I love them, I respect them, and I was very happy. You don't want to get greedy. I was very happy with a six-figure win guaranteed before kickoff. The heavy lifting was done back in October when I had the vision and I saw this KC to play and or beat the Eagles in the Super Bowl months ago.
And take us inside about getting in early. You know, you're not going to give us any, again, until you make the bet for next NFL season. And there are odds out there already, viewers, by the way. The second the Super Bowl ended on Sunday, there were odds for next year. It's the Chiefs and Ravens as favorites, and Scotty's got some thoughts he'll share with us down the road once he makes a bet. But you talked to us about getting in early. I spent some time setting that up, but talk to us again about how getting in early paid out big time for you, as it usually does, Scotty.
Yes and no, because on this show, Radio TV with you, Dave, in August, you and Mike respectfully asked me, hey, who do you like for the Super Bowl? My sports betting seminar online, live in the studio in August as well. Same thing, documented audio, video evidence. And I said it would be KC having the inside track for the #1 seed. And then not the Niners, who were the odds-on favorite, not the Lions, who were the second odds-on favorite. I went with the team that wasn't even projected to win their division in July. Dallas, believe it or not, they were favored to win the division. When the opening kickoff took place, Philly was a small favorite to win their division, but they got off to a slow start. They were 2-2 when I made the +55 to 1 bet, but I waited because I knew the Chiefs, they would be a very good team this year, and I thought they would be the #1 seed, but their first 5 games were murderous. So I felt if they could come out 4-1, 5-0, that's when I would step up and step out, and they finished 5-0. So I said, okay, now let's bet. No one's looking at the Eagles, but I am. And there's a reason why they finished the season 16-1 and stuck it to Mahomes and Reed in the Super Bowl, because the only game they lost was a fluke. It was on the last play against the Washington Commanders. So I give credit where credit is due. But to your other point, my friend, you're sharp. You ask very good, thought-provoking questions. I'm already looking at next year, and I can't give it away, because if there are other sharps watching, they're going to move the number like I moved the number, and then I'm going to be compromising value. But I will say, it's a team that did not make the playoffs, and it's a team. And the other thing I'll say is never underestimate the value of a 4th place schedule. But details later, my friend. And even though I'm going to LA Intuit Dome to see the Grizzlies play the Clippers on Wednesday night. And then on Thursday, I'm off to the Philippines and Thailand for my annual trip. And I'll be back May 1st. But I've said no to all the radio and TV and podcasting with one exception, your podcast, your show, because I am such a big fan of what you do at the highest level and big fan of Mike Palm. So even though it'll be 4:15 a.m. in Thailand, I will be setting my alarm. Who am I kidding? I'll still be up. Are you kidding me? So yeah, I'll just make sure I talk to you at 4:15 in the morning, my time, and then I'll go to bed or out to breakfast.
Safe travels, and thank you so much for the kind words, and know that it's likewise back to you, my friend.
Thanks, Dave. Have a good week, my man. We'll talk to you next week.
I'll do the same, and you do the same as well. So for Scott Pritchard, again, professional sports bettor at Pritchard Wins and Pritchard'sPicks.com, full-time, very successful professional sports bettor in Vegas, 32 plus years, but a Northeast Iowa native, as am I. So again, thanks also to Sean Bock, and Sean again with 24/7 Sports and CBS Sports, and my production partners at Better Edge and BetterEdge.com, James Siles and Greg Kajewski, and to you, the viewers. For Hawkeye, I'm Dave O'Hara. That's all from me. Thanks to all of you.